I was fairly new, and they had me praying, but I don't really believe in God yet. But I believe in my own hopelessness, and I believe that I'm in a bad place and I need some help. And a guy comes up to me after a meeting, and he said to me, "Kid, you need to take step 3. And I looked at the steps on the board, and the step 3's got the G word in it, God, and I'm not good with that. I told Joe, I said, "Joe, I can't take step 3 because I don't believe in God." And he said, "You don't have to believe in God to take step 3. I said, "Well, Joe, look at step 2, came to believe. Step 3, God as we understood him. I don't have any of that." And he said, "Kid, you don't have to believe in God to take step 3. He said, "If you'll turn your will and your life over to this chair," and he points to a chair in the Alano Club, "I guarantee you an instant miracle." And I just thought, oh, what the hell? All right, Joe, I turned my will and my life over to the chair. And Joe says, "The miracle is your life's no longer in the hands of an idiot." And I got it. I got it. I must have been surrendered by the bottle enough to be able to see past my own defenses and my own justifications and rationalizations, to see the truth. And the truth was that I was the source of my demise. One of the things, there was a famous doctor in the U.S., Dr. Jelinek, and he was one of the guys, him and Marty Mann started the School of Alcoholism Studies at an Ivy League university, and also the National Council on Alcoholism back in the 40s. And Jelinek created something that was an industry standard in treatment for years called the Jelinek chart. And he charted the progression of the disease of chronic alcoholism down, with the different stages and the blackouts and the loss of self-respect, on and on and on. And at the very bottom of the chart, right before the point where you're either going to die or you're going to start coming up and turning your life around through recovery, the last thing you lost was, he referred to it as the collapse of the alibi system. In other words, you get to a point where the excuses and the justifications and rationalizations that you've been using to justify your patheticness for years don't hold water anymore. They're so threadbare you can't even tell them to yourself, let alone try to tell them to somebody else. You've used them, and they're not even, and you know that they don't even mean anything anymore. The collapse of the alibi system. And I guess that had happened to me, and I didn't know it. So when Joe said your life would be in the hands of an idiot, was no longer in the hands of an idiot, I just thought, it sure has been, hasn't it? If you had watched me from afar, if you just observed me, possibly as your friends and family and neighbors and fellow employees had watched you, your last couple years of drinking. When you think about it objectively, could anyone watching me come to any conclusion other than whoever's making decisions for Bob must be out to kill him? And yet, as long as I could still rationalize and justify and defend and explain myself to myself, I could dodge it. No, I could deflect reality. Everybody else around me knows I'm dying. But I have excuses and reasons and explanations for everything. Alcoholism is the most defended disease on the planet. You will never see someone with terminal cancer go to the mental lengths that we go to tell themselves they don't have cancer. Or the cancer's not my fault. Or the cancer's, somebody did this to me. Or I was potty trained, that's why I had cancer. All the excuses. I remember I was working in the field back in the days when it was very, very chic and popular to find reasons why your whole life is your parents' fault. And everybody who went down that road just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. Because there's no forgiveness there. There's no acceptance. There's no humanity. There's just judgment. So we make this crazy, crazy decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Unfortunately, I, like almost everyone I've ever talked to, no matter how sincerely I make the decision, I can't seem to carry it out. I want to. I need to. I understand. I should. I understand my life without this decision. I'm in the hands of an idiot, but I can't let go of the wheel of my own ship. I cannot relinquish the control. And I'll tell you what I discovered about me. I think I was as addicted to running my life and worrying about me as I ever was to alcohol and combinations of drugs and alcohol. Funny thing about addiction is you don't know you're addicted to something until you try to stop. If you don't think you're addicted to your own self-involvement and control, try not to worry about yourself at all for 24 hours. Let's make it easy. 24 minutes. You don't know how strung out you are on something until you try to quit. And I was addicted to my own self-obsession, my own self-concern. And that's what it's, when Chamberlain said there's one problem that contains all problems, this conscious and unconscious separation, our book says something very important to me. It says that the root of that is selfishness and self-centeredness. The reason that I'm separate from God and separate from you is there's too much of me between me and God, too much of me between me and you. It was so, when I was new, it's almost embarrassing to tell you this, but I think I was in AA for quite some time before I realized anyone else was here. No, I mean, you were like cardboard cutouts I'd share about my problems to, I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, now that sounds silly, but I had no empathy, no connection, no concern with you. It's like you could come up to me and tell me some horrible thing that's happened to you, and I'm just trying to wait for you to shut up so I can tell you about me, because I want to tell you about me. I want to tell you, you could have terminal cancer, but my hangnail is really bugging me, man. It's me. I'm so self-obsessed. And the book says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. The root, without the root, there is no tree, there is no plant, there is nothing without the root. And then it starts talking about a dynamic that we will start to see very clearly and up close and personal in step 4 as we follow the procedure in the book. It says driven, and boy, I like that word because, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous as a type A personality and you turned me into a type B. But when I came here, I felt driven. I couldn't sit still. I chain smoked about 3 packs a day. I was like nervous. I was that guy. It was really crazy. I was driven. And I couldn't have told you what I was driven by, but man, I felt driven. And I was driven by 100 forms of fear. Self-delusion. That psychotic, wishful thinking. It's not, I understand, I can see reality, I just don't like it. And I fancy alternate realities, and I fancy them so well and so long that to me they become real. You ever had this experience? Maybe some of you that are sober a long time. You've had bad experiences in relationships, and you know it. You've done another inventory on the sex relationships, and you see how you've been selfish, and you've been driven by fear and self-seeking, and you've been dishonest and inconsiderate, and I get it. I got to be different. I got to be a different guy. And then you're also looking at who you picking. instead of picking trustworthy people, or people with spirituality, or people who are kind, or you're picking people who, based on one thing, the only thing that means anything to self-centered people, how do they make me feel? I'm looking for a drink with 2 legs. And you know you can't do that. That's not going to work. It didn't work the last 10 times. It's not going to work the 11th. You know that, so you're going to do things differently. And you start formulating, okay, the image of your mate, trustworthy, spiritual, kind, principled, with ethics, good with people, self-supporting, nice. You have the whole list. You have the whole list. And here's where self-delusion comes in. I got 8 factors that are deal breakers. I have to have someone with all 8 of those factors in order, because otherwise it's not going to work. I find somebody with one of the 8 factors, and it's usually good sex. And then I will imagine they have the other 7, or at least that they will under my tutelage. Who's the crazy person here? It's not them. They never profess to be all these things that I'm imagining them to be. I'm the crazy person. And then get mad when they're not what they never said they were. Right? That's nuts. And how often I've sat and listened to guys' 5th steps, and they've done exactly that. And we get pissed at people because they're not doing our will, basically, right? They're not becoming what we think they should be. Because I'm selfish and self-centered, and selfish and self-centered people only concern themselves with themselves. My feelings, my gratification, my comfort, my security, me, 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 me. The book says something interesting. It says that we are producers of confusion rather than harmony. No matter if it's in the workplace, in a family, and even in your AA group. Everybody else is they're trying to do harmony. And they're all trying to sing in the same key. Do, re, mi, and the alcoholics, me, me, me. Right? I mean, we're stuck. We're stuck on me. I'm stuck on me. Right? Yeah. Who cares about Do and Re? It's me. Jeez. So I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I hate self-pity. I'm a depressive. Matter of fact, this chronic dissatisfaction, where the more I stare at my life, the more dissatisfied and incomplete and the more lacking it seems to be. And it's that perception and that consciousness is independent of how good your life really is. Do you know guys in $5 million homes with more money in the bank than a human being could spend in a lifetime have the same chronic depression based on chronic dissatisfaction because they have everything, but it's not really it either, right? It's that malcontent. And I'm driven by this self-pity. And I had a friend, Scott used to say, if you could bottle self-pity, it would knock crack off the market in about a week. Because we drink of self-pity like it was a bottle of whiskey with an obsessiveness. I remember the first time I was ever up against it. A guy in my home group was having an open house party, which an open house means everybody's invited, period. And I'm at the home group, and they announced the open house. And then at the break, he got up, the guy who was having the party, and he walked right past me to personally invite someone on the other side of the room. Didn't invite me. Went out of his way to invite that idiot. And I knew I knew he didn't want me there. He didn't like me. He never did like me. Never did like me. So I'm going to punish him. I'm not going to go. The party's Sunday afternoon. Sunday morning, my phone starts ringing. Guys are calling me. You going up to that party? I am not. Why not? Oh, I don't really feel comfortable up there. I don't really feel like they would want me up there. Well, of course, it's your home group. It's an open house. Yeah, they want you. Come on up. No, that's all right. You go up. Have a good time. I'll find some old movie on TV. Don't worry about me. It's juicy, isn't it? It's just like, can you drink that bottle dry? I don't know if you could. Just that feeling, that ego-feeding feeling that I just probably suffer more than anyone. Or looking at people that are happy and going, you probably couldn't take it if you felt like I do. As if I was smugly superior. So I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Driven by these emotions. And earlier in the book it says one of the symptoms of untreated alcoholism is we cannot control our emotional natures. And driven by these things, what happens? I step on the toes of my fellows, and they retaliate. Of course they do. Of course they do. Somebody steps on your toes, you're going to do something. You're going to do something back at them. Of course you do. And they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation, without reason. But I will invariably, which is like almost always, I will invariably find that at some time in the past, I have made decisions based on self. My need for self-grandizement, self-security, self-gratification, self-validation. I will make decisions based on self, on me, that has later placed me right in that position to be hurt. And the book goes on to say, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. You mean to say that I'm the guy who does this to me? When it looks like you did it to me, it's actually me doing it to me? Hard to believe. When you've spent your whole life seeing how they've done it to you, to start buying a bitter truth that it's not them, it's you. That I am the source of all my self-judgment. I am the source of all my fears. I am the source of all my conflict, and I am the source of all my separation. But it's me. It's always been me. And then the book says something I think is, I don't know if Wilson's trying to be funny, or he says, our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic, and he uses the word extreme, is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. What's he saying here? Is he saying, Bob, you're a little self-centered? Nah. He said, Bob, the level of self-will of the human race is about here. You see that thing way up there? That's you, Bob. You're an extreme example of self and self-will, what self wants, run riot. Though you usually don't think so. I watched this thing with the guys I sponsor, and I went through it. I went through it with my sponsor, and it's hilarious, where you're going along your first couple of years, and you're hearing people talk in the meetings about selfishness and self-centeredness, and yeah, you're nodding your head, sure, okay. And then all of a sudden, it starts to hit you, and they'll come to me, or as I went to my sponsor, and I'll go, I don't know what's wrong with me. I was never this self-centered before. Yes, you were. You just didn't think so. You just filled the requirement in the book. Because we hide ourselves from ourselves. It's called self-delusion. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be self-centered. It doesn't change it. Matter of fact, the book goes on to say, we had to be, neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. And that's really true. When I first started realizing that how self-centered I really was, and that really and truly has been and is the root of my troubles, I thought that knowing that I could reduce it some on my own, or maybe even stop being that way, and it wouldn't budge. Lack of power really is my dilemma. You know, I can know, and knowledge is not power. I can know I'm selfish. I can know I'm self-obsessed. I can know I'm self-centered. I can know that this must change. I can know it's making me miserable and lonely and separate and apart from. It's causing the demise of my work. It's the demise of relationships, of everything in my life. It is the root of my troubles. I can know that beyond a shadow of a doubt and not change it. Because I can't. I can't will it away. I can't wish it away. Lack of power really and truly is my dilemma. So we had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. As when you take the position in the third step, and that doesn't mean you've carried it out, the decision, but you're on the road. I think step 3 is very much like any other decision. I've made a decision that on the 5th of July, I'm flying back to Las Vegas. I've made that decision. Did you notice that I'm still in Dublin? There is a whole bunch of stuff I have to do before I actualize the decision, before I carry it out. And the same is true with step 3. I can make the decision, but all I'm really doing is I'm expressing an intention, and I'm setting myself on the road towards its fruition. I'm aiming. It's a change in direction. It's a change in direction in our life. From now on, I want to make my life none of my business. And that's what we're addressing in the third step prayer. In the first line of the prayer, it says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as you will, not as I want. What I want is getting set aside, because the first thing I'm turning over to God is what I want. I got to stop wanting what I want and start wanting what he wants. I'm abandoning my way. And I'm going to try to take a position of not having a way. I'll take his way, whatever it may be. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to trust that it's going to be okay. So I'm making a decision from this moment on to make my life none of my business. It's now in God's hands. It's God's business. Well, if you're like me, that's about impossible. How does a person who's spent decades worrying about themselves, concerned about themselves, wondering about themselves, wondering about you and what do you think about me? Well, how can you stop doing that? You can't. Because you're too wrapped up in you. So the next part of the prayer is I'm beseeching God to relieve me of this bondage of self. And I think bondage is a good word because I am shackled and a hostage and a prisoner of my own obsessive self-involvement. I can't wish it away. So I'm asking God to relieve me of this bondage of self so that I may better do his will. And then this last line completes the contractual agreement here between me and God. Take away these difficulties. What difficulties? That you don't have enough money, that you're not getting your way? No, it's not it at all. It's the difficulties with the bondage of self and how it creates fear, resentments, conflicts. Take away these difficulties for one reason, and one reason only. Take away these difficulties so that victory over them would bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. I had a new guy, I was taking through this, and he read that last line, and he said to me, it blew my mind, because I didn't get it till he said it. He said, you mean we're doing all of this just so we can help other people? Oh yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. No, I didn't know that. I thought it was about take away my difficulties, and I had a list of things I wanted, and like God was Santa Claus or something, you know. And we do it all just to help other people. That Alcoholics Anonymous, this is later on in the book, it refers to us being on a different basis. This is the new basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. This is the new normal for us that are abnormal. The new normal is, I'm going to try to make my life none of my business, and I'm going to try to help God's kids. That Alcoholics Anonymous is not a self-help program. We've had enough. When it comes to self-help, it's kind of like it's like the love affair between the old horny tomcat and the skunk. The old tomcat didn't get all he wanted, he just got all he could stand. I mean, I can't stand any more self-help. I mean, I've done it all. Everything from primal screaming to you name it, I took a run at it. I need self-abandonment and service, because when I'm in service, I'm forgetting myself and I'm out of the way, and that's when God seems to work the best, is when I've taken my hands off the wheel of my ship and I'm over here reaching my hand out instead to someone I can help. That's when God seems to steer my life in amazing directions that I could never steer my life there. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. I got down on my knees with another member of Alcoholics Anonymous at about a year sober, roughly. And I said this third step prayer out loud. And from that day on, I incorporated it into my mornings. And I said the third step prayer every morning, every single morning. I didn't miss it, every morning. And I started noticing something that was very perplexing and discouraging for me, is that I would get up in the morning and I would do a little bit of meditation. I'd read something and do a little meditation, and then I'd say my prayers in the prayer. I would say the third step prayer. And I would say it some mornings I would be rushed and I wouldn't say it with much heart. But a lot of mornings I would say it with full and genuine intention to carry out what I'm saying here. Because I get it. I know my life's going to be better if I'm not at the helm of the ship. I know it's going to be better. And yet I say the prayer, I have the honest and genuine intention. I get up off my knees, and within 10 minutes I'm in my head running the universe. I'm driving to work, having conversations in the car with people that aren't in the car, that I'm going to see later that day. And I'm back in the control center again. And I thought, man, what's wrong with me? How come I can't carry this out? Well, The bottom of page 63 and the top of 64 explains exactly what was happening to me. And it happens to all of us. The intention of carrying out the decision in step 3 is not enough. It says in the bottom of 63, it says, this is immediately getting off your knees from the third step prayer. It says, next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us never attempted. Though our decision, step 3, was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once, which in my case was 4 years later, unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Boy, that's a good way to say it. I was blocked. I intended to carry out the decision. I wanted to carry out the decision. I needed to carry out the decision. I couldn't carry out the decision. And not was I only blocked from carrying out the decision, I was blocked from a conscious contact. I believe in God, I have faith, but I don't have what some of the people in AA talk about. And I'm blocked from other people. There's a loneliness that I've come to think of it as the loneliness of the self-involved, where you're so self-involved you're not connected with anybody. It's a horrible, subtle feeling at times in rooms full of people that all seem to be plugged in, where it's all of them and then there's you. And an absolute and heartbreaking inability to connect with others the way they seem to easily connect with each other. And I was at that place, and these are some of the symptoms of untreated alcoholism. That I've made the decision in step 3, but I can't carry it out. I'm blocked. I'm very serious. Seriousness is one of the major symptoms of obsessive self-involvement. It was so bad that I had someone at a meeting accuse me of having my sense of humor surgically removed. Because when you're the center of the universe, let me tell you something. There is a lot of crap to worry about. And I worried about a lot. And I was very serious and very self-righteous. And I would beat people over the head with things I'd learned in AA. Self-righteous. I couldn't hold a job. In my first 4 years of sobriety, I went through 9 jobs. That speaks volumes of untreated alcoholism. I never, every place I went to work, they seemed nice when they hired me. But after a while, it became very apparent to me that these people are stupid. They don't know what they're doing. Some of those places have been doing it wrong successfully for decades. And I'm the guy that's always leaving. 9 jobs, 4 years. Speaks volumes right there. And I went back and by this time I'd heard my first Joe, in late 1980, I heard my first Joe and Charlie workshop. It blew my mind. And my home group was a big book study group, but we didn't study the big book. We read it and talked about our day. We read it and talked about our drunk-a-log. We did everything except actually study the book. We read it. We were in the directory as a big book study, but we didn't study the big book. And I remember listening to Joe and Charlie. And I had to go grab my book. That's not in there. Like I was hearing them talk about stuff I'd never heard anybody talk about. And right after that, one of the guys I sponsor, I took him through a 4-step out of the book exactly as it's written in the book. And I hadn't done one like that yet. I had done 4 steps. I did my life story, 40 pages of like confession. I could have taken it to a priest. But it had nothing to do with AA, and I had no results from it. Nothing changed. Everything on there, I knew about it. The book implies that this is going to be an epiphany experience. It says that it's a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. I didn't find any new facts about me in that inventory. I didn't face any new facts. It says it's an effort to discover the truth. I didn't discover any truth. I mean, I had 40 pages of things I felt bad about, but there was nothing new there. No shift in perception, nothing. When I followed the procedure in the book, my life changed, and I've never been the same. So I got a guy I'm sponsoring, and I'm taking him through this, and I learned how to do a 4-step, helping a guy do a 4-step. I think that there's a line in Hindu literature that I think is beautiful. It says that the student doesn't learn the lesson until he becomes the teacher. Boy, that's really true in my case. I learned how to do a 4-step, teaching a guy how to do a 4-step. I hadn't done one myself. It's amazing. And when I came back and I started myself, it was amazing. I started with the resentment inventory. And it's in 6 parts. 4 of them are implied writing. 1 is the most crucial of the 6, is a very important innermost self-realization. And then the other one is a prayer. So what do? Well, on the bottom of page 64, it starts by saying, we listed the people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. So if you want to look on page 65, it's the column on the left where it says, I'm resentful at. It's the who's. So you got column number 1, it's who. There may be some principles and institutions, but my experience is probably 98% of it is who. It's people. Because we notice. And I was sober over 4 years when I did my first real one. So I had a lot of people on AA there. Because I've been watching you. And so I got the who. And then it says, we ask ourselves why. So column number 2, the middle column, why? The cause. Why was I angry? And if you notice, in column number 2, it's just bullet points. Little brief, little snippets to describe the reality of what actually happened. Little snippets, bullet points. Which seems a little shallow and sort of lean. I think this should be like essays. Because I want to explain it to such a degree that when I read it to my sponsor, he'll understand it properly. And he'll say something like, he did that to you. I'm going to get the boys together. I want him to hate the people I hate the way I hate the people I hate, right? Because I fancy myself contagious when it comes to resentments. I'm willing to share. And so, column number 2, little bullet points. The facts. Just the facts. Column number 3, what aspects of self? And the book uses 5 terms starting at the bottom, top of the page, 65. The things that were hurt or threatened, injured, or interfered with. And then the top of the column says effects, affected. So I'm looking for the aspects of self such as pride, self-esteem, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook, all the things listed in the book that had been hurt, threatened, injured, interfered with, or affected. And then what? Well, I've met people in AA that's as far as they go. And I'll tell you from my experience, if that's as far as you go, you will get sicker. I think what we're doing here in the first 3 columns, and the first 3 things, is we're documenting our victimization. We're putting it on paper. But it is absolutely necessary for the self-reduction and ego deflation that is absolutely necessary. The great psychiatrist Harry Tebow, who worked with Bill Wilson for a number of years, he said that the alcoholic must have ego deflation at depth. Must. And that's the problem with me and God, is I got to get smaller to get closer to God. And what does the ego do the most? It judges. So what they've just tricked me into doing is listing the cases and judgments I've built on everyone I've known. I mean, almost as if I was a prosecuting attorney. First column is the perpetrators. Second column, the heinous acts. And third column is the damage done. As if I was a prosecuting attorney ready to go for the death sentence here. And then it takes all of page 66 to convince me of something. It starts off by saying it's plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. Well, that would be bad enough, except that it gets more serious. It says these resentments are infinitely grave. We found that they're fatal. So now they're threatening my life. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And with us to drink is to die. And threatening my life again. If we were to live, there's another implied death threat. I mean, huh? Okay, we got to quit? Okay, give me 1 minute. All right. And then I clicked my heels together and I was sober, and it's just wonderful for the rest of my life. And if that hasn't happened to you, well, God doesn't like you. Oh, God, that's on the recording. Oh, my God. Don't anybody send that to my sponsor. Jesus.